Welcome to the Explainer. We all exist within an environment, right? But how often do we actually stop to trace those invisible threads connecting, say, a single drop of water to the entire biosphere? Well, today, we are unpacking the literal blueprint of life. Let's dive right in.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll be defining our world, checking out the science of ecology, zooming through the ecological hierarchy, really understanding the ecosystem, and finally wrapping up with niches, ecotones, and adaptation.
Okay, part 1, defining our world and asking the big question, what actually surrounds us?
So the word environment actually comes from the French word environner, which literally means to encircle. And think about it, we're constantly encircled by two very distinct worlds. On one hand, we've got the natural environment, the forests, the sunlight, the raw earth. But equally impactful is the human-made environment, the concrete, the skyscrapers, the whole infrastructure that dictates our modern lives.
And here's the thing, humanity rarely sits on the outside looking in. We are right smack in the middle of this vast overlapping web. We don't just interact with air and water. Our survival, our day-to-day behavior is totally dictated by human-made structures like bridges and even social constructs like our economy and education systems. It's all connected.
Now, ultimately, every single environment out there rests on 4 physical pillars. You've got the atmosphere, which gives us that exact gaseous mix we need for our lungs, the lithosphere, providing the solid bedrock and soil that anchors all life, the hydrosphere, which dictates our weather and water cycles, and where those 3 perfectly overlap, bam, you get the biosphere, that highly specific, incredibly fragile zone where life actually flourishes.
Moving on to section 2, the science of ecology and how we actually study all this interconnectedness.
Believe it or not, the term ecology wasn't even coined until 1866. A German zoologist named Ernst Haeckel smashed together the Greek word oikos, which means household, and logos, meaning study. This was a massive, game-changing shift in thinking. Suddenly, nature wasn't just a random list of animals anymore. It was viewed as a literal household. And science finally began studying how all the residents of that household interacted with each other.
To really grasp ecology, scientists use 2 totally different lenses. The first one is autoecology. Think of this like focusing a spotlight on a solitary individual organism or a single species just to see how it operates in isolation. The second lens is synecology. This is where you pan the camera way out to view the whole bustling community. It's all about understanding those super complex interactions between different groups and species living together.
All right, section 3, the ecological hierarchy. We are going to zoom all the way from the micro to the macro.
You see, nature builds itself in this strict layered hierarchy. Think of a single deer, that's our basic organism. Group it with others that share its genetics, and you've got a species. Now, when that specific group of deer lives in the exact same forest at the exact same time, they become a population. But obviously, they aren't alone out there, right? They interact with the trees, the wolves, the birds, forming a community. Add in the non-living elements like the rainfall and the dirt, and you've just built an ecosystem. If you scale that ecosystem up across a massive geographic region, like say a vast taiga, you get a biome. And you guessed it, all biomes combined create the entire biosphere.
Which brings us perfectly to section 4, understanding the ecosystem, which is really the core functional unit here.
So, back in 1935, Sir Arthur George Tansley dropped the term ecosystem on us, and it completely redefined how we look at nature. It is absolutely crucial to separate the word environment from ecosystem. Your environment, that's just your physical surroundings. But an ecosystem, that is the functional engine room. It's the study of the actual energy flow, and all those complex, invisible transactions happening between living things and that physical space.
Now, every single ecosystem operates on a strict, frankly unforgiving energy budget. Nature essentially balances its books using 3 main accounts. First up, physical factors like sunlight and rainfall. These act as the absolute hard limits to growth. Second, inorganic substances like carbon dioxide and soil. And finally, the organic compounds, your carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. These organics are basically the magic bridge. They are the literal link transforming non-living raw materials into living, breathing biological systems.
Let's look at section 5, niches, ecotones, and adaptation. Basically, how life finds its place in the web.
So within any shared habitat, like say a pond, survival essentially comes down to having a highly specific job, what we call a niche. And a niche isn't just an organism's zip code, it's its functional profession. It's exactly what it eats, when it reproduces,
and exactly how much temperature variation it can tolerate. And nature is ruthlessly efficient about this. It's a hard and fast rule of ecology that no two species can occupy the exact same niche in the same habitat without one eventually completely outcompeting the other.
But hey, nature rarely draws straight lines, does it? When a forest meets a meadow, it creates what's called an ecotone. This is definitely not a hard border. It's more of a shifting zone of tension, where abiotic factors like humidity and light collide and blend together. And because these zones offer kind of intermediate conditions, they become absolute biological hotspots. We're talking incredible species diversity and density. And honestly, we humans create these abrupt ecotones all the time, like when a perfectly manicured farm field suddenly slams into a wild forest. To actually hold on to these specific niches, organisms have to constantly solve environmental puzzles, and they do this through adaptation. This plays out in three distinct ways. Structurally, like a desert fox evolving massive ears to radiate heat, or an Arctic fox keeping them tiny to retain it. Physiologically, like a kangaroo rat developing specialized kidneys so it can survive in the desert without ever drinking water. And behaviorally, like emperor penguins physically huddling together to survive those brutal Antarctic winters. It's Darwin and Wallace's natural selection playing out in real time, right in front of us. Nature is just continuously editing itself to survive.
We've seen the absolute brilliance of these perfectly balanced niches and adaptations. But as we know, this vast system has hard limits. So what happens when an ecosystem's fundamental energy budget is permanently exceeded? When the Earth loses more than 3/4 of its species in just a blink of geological time? Well, we call that a mass extinction. Looking at the incredibly complex, interconnected blueprint of life we've explored in this explainer today, it really leaves us with one critical question to ponder. Just how resilient, or maybe how dangerously fragile, is this biological hierarchy we call home?